Hello there ladies and gentlemen, gamer boys and girls, welcome back to the pod. July is here, the heat took over, and all we want is an ice cold beverage and some games to be played. So let's jump right into the 2022 July bundle.
A mix between a tactical fighter and a rogue deck builder, in Banners of Ruin, hares, mice, bears and many more beat the crap out of each other until there's only one party left standing. The core of Banners is a tactical turn-based fighter. Two teams face each other, split between two rows each, arriving with up to 6 fighters. Individual fighters differ from one another based on their race, which grants a unique racial ability, and their weapons. To win the fight, you have to reduce the health of everyone on the opposing team to 0, and to do so, you'll spend your fighter's action points to play the cards you draw each turn from your deck. The interesting part of all of it is how each fighter has their individual pool of resources, so you'll have to think through who does what. The less interesting, or rather annoying part, is how based on their equipment and talents, the fighters will add specific cards to your deck that only they can use. The flavor is easy to understand here, but every now and then, when this just messes up your draw completely and leads to wasted turns, or even worse, taking damage that could have been avoided, you won't care the slightest for the flavor. Other than these moments though, the fights tend to be fun enough to keep you wanting more. This whole fighting core is then wrapped up in a roguelike deck builder casing. While presented in a different manner, it's the familiar system you might know from the likes of Slay the Spire or Griftlands. Jump through nodes from the beginning to the end of each chapter. The nodes will contain random fights or events, either rewarding the player with currency and cards, and then there's a boss to fight before advancing to the next chapter. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Banners of Ruin. It's a fair enough experience, especially at the price point the Choice Bundle offers it. You'll know it if this was the game you were looking for, and you'll certainly also enjoy it for a few hours.
Dwarves. Whether they live in a fantasy world or a sci-fi world, their job is always the same. Digging, digging and digging. The gameplay of Deep Rock Galactic is very simple to explain. Choosing our dwarf among one of the 4 available classes, Gunner, Explorer, Driller and Engineer, you have to select one of the available missions and set off on the adventure alone or in the company of a maximum 3 other dwarfs. Usually we are required to collect a certain amount of given mineral, but there are also variants that include the collection of hidden objects, such as eggs, or others in which you will have to kill a particularly difficult enemy, or others in which you have to fix damage caused by those who preceded us. In any case, we will have to dig. The caves we will enter are procedurally generated and completely destructible. Each class of dwarf has its own specific equipment, but never fails to carry a precious pickaxe, which allows you not to only crush the veins of precious mineral, but also to dig into the bare rock. Throughout all the missions, we will be followed by a mineral deposit unit, which we can use to get rid of what is collected and to ask for supplies in case we run out of bullets or other useful items such as grenades or grapples. At the end of each mission, our dwarf will be rewarded not only with his due pay, but also with experience points. The latter will unlock levels linked to upgrades of the dwarf or the equipment. Ghost Ship Games is committed to making the characters as customizable as possible, both aesthetically and in their equipment. The progression system really considers every aspect and allows you to upgrade every piece of its equipment, with some improvements that are unlocked only after leveling up. But let's go back to the caves. These are usually mazes of rock, lava, crystals and so on, depending the selected biome, that require you to go deeper and deeper to hunt for what the mission requires. Once the primary objective has been reached, we can call the mining ship that will take us back to the base, running back all the way. Unfortunately, the caves are not depopulated. Indeed, they are full of gigantic insects that can't wait to tear us apart in protest our aggressive expansionist policy. Under normal conditions there are not very many enemies around. The real danger is represented by the swarm. That is a large wave of insects ready to kill you. So Deep Rock Galactic is that classic title that played alone makes a fraction of what it does in co-op. In fact, the whole game was designed to encourage team play. The hub area itself shouts "let's do this together" from all the meshes. In essence, if you don't have friends to play with, or if you don't like looking for adventure companions online, just forget it, because you risk being overwhelmed by the repetitiveness of the missions and the game structure. But if you have friends to play with, or randoms from the internet, it is a blast to play.
Offering the Dungeon Delver experience in reverse, Legend of Keepers asks of you to keep the good guys out of the boss lair rather than raiding it. You'll be doing the following. Step 1. Pick a big bad, basically your player character, that's also the end boss of every dungeon and who you need to keep alive for X number of in-game weeks. Step 2. Pass said in-game weeks by overcoming the randomly offered weekly raids or interactive events, such as random encounters, opportunities to upgrade or shop, send minions on quests, and so on. Mostly the weekly raids is where you'll be spending your time. You'll enter a randomly generated set of rooms, which you'll have to prep, set up your minions in the fighting room, set up your traps in the trap rooms, and start the raid. The AI-controlled raiding party will then advance through the rooms, getting weaker, more damaged and more afraid as they delve deeper and deeper until they reach the final room, the boss lair, and you'll have your last chance to get rid of them there or die yourself. Ideally, of course, you'll already get rid of some or all of them by the time they would arrive here by dealing enough damage to their life points or their morale, but usually they'll easily liquidate at least your first room of minions. While there's a notable roster of good and evil representatives as well, I'm not sure if they would offer a similarly vast array of available experiences. My assumption is this variety would mostly come from the different big bads, but you have to unlock the 3 available in the base game by playing, and the other 3 are DLC content. Just keep in mind at some point there's a chance the game becomes repetitive, but so far, close to 3 hours in, it delivers a strong just one more turn vibe. It might take a minute to figure out the horrendous UI, but after that, Legend of Keepers, for me at least, was a fun experience, which I want to go back to at least unlock and try the other bosses as well.
Gardens. There are those who love it and those who hate it. Many find it relaxing to take care of their green areas, planting flowers and trying to obtain a similar result to the famous English lawn. Others, on the other hand, cannot bear the idea of grinding blades, plucking weeds, and so on and so forth. But if the aforementioned activities entice you, Lawn Moving Simulator is the title for you. Not for me, but maybe for you. Okay, I got to be honest in here. I've played this fucking game for 2 hours. I've really tried to enjoy it, but to be honest, this was the goddamn grenade in this bundle I had to take for V. During the time I've played this joke of a game, I was contemplating if really anything should be made into a game. So far there was Rover Mechanic Simulator, Bee Simulator, PC Building Simulator, and the worst of it all, Train Station Renovation, and now this. This is a long line of games I just can't understand. Who the hell would like to sit in front of a computer moving grass for hours for fun? All in all, for me, this is a one-pointer, cause the game looks nice and it's somewhat okay, but let's get something straight. I'd rather chop my balls off with a plastic knife than to play this garbage again. So if you want to mow some grass, be my guest, but otherwise, miss me with this abomination.
I'm pretty sure if you took the Stalker series, or the Metro series, skinned one of them and then wrapped the skin on Fallout 2 gameplay core, you'd get Trudograd. Or in other words, Trudograd is a CRPG based in an alternate timeline Earth, where the Cold War ended in the major parties blasting each other off the face of the planet, and you're now stuck in a dystopian slice of the Eastern Bloc. It's also a standalone expansion to its predecessor, Atom RPG. As any other self-respecting CRPG would, Trudograd also starts off with creating and customizing your character, tweaking stats, perks, backgrounds, yada yada, then pulls you in with a reasonably foreboding intro scene, and finally lets you loose in the starting area. You can run around stealing anything you can get your dirty hands on, interact with a ton of NPCs to learn more about the world surrounding you, to pick up and advance quest lines, and of course to trade. I've actually never even left the starting area in my few hours of playtime, just kept on having conversations, solved the case of a lady claiming to have been repeatedly visited by a demon at night, figured out how to repair the radio of a crazy hobo, which might or might not have involved occasionally stepping on landmines, and thought long and hard on how to handle a rough sounding situation, to then wisely make the wrong decision. I obviously could not give you an accurate read on a 20-hour plus game after just 3 hours of playtime, but from what I've seen, if you're craving a role-playing game of Elden ways, you won't be dissatisfied after picking this one up.
Talking about tower defense video games is not easy, and there are not even who knows how many things to talk about. But what makes Legion TD2 developed by Auto Attack Games different from its brothers? Well, Legion TD2 introduces several novelties. We are faced with a tower defense with 8 different factions to choose from, that not only is multiplayer up to 8 players, but also offers a campaign to be played in single player. In this video game, we will be able to choose one of these different factions, all different from each other. These are Adept, Renegade, Salva, Mecha, Atlantis, Nomad, Sanctuary or Divine. The possibilities of fielding more or less strong minions will not only be decided by different cards for each type or faction, but also by the gold we will receive and the amount of materials that our workers will make. Let's start by explaining. It seems easy, but it's not at all. The mechanics of the game itself, which offers 2 lanes that all converge towards our king, while alongside other 2 lanes that both converge against the opposing king. Lanes that will be invaded from defense and attack minions. At each round we will have a timer to position our defense troops that will have the task of stopping the advance of the enemy waves fielded by the enemy and by the AI. But each wave will be increasingly difficult to face, but on the other hand it will also provide us with various gold to use to our advantage. With the gold earned, we will be able to field other defense troops, upgrade those already positioned or trained workers, which we will see in the center of the lanes. To extract the Methium, a mineral that we will need to hire mercenaries to add to the next wave, so it will attack our enemy. It is clear that our opponent will also have the same chance. He will be able to farm Methium through trained workers using gold as well. We are not faced with a simple game to play as regards the multiplayer mode. It will be very important to cooperate in a tactical way between the players of the same team. In fact, we will have different lanes, 1 per player, based on the number of players present in the game and whose game mechanics already explained above will be the same for everyone. In summary, at each turn we will have to play defense cards or units to defend ourselves from the enemy waves led by the AI, to which enemy mercenaries hired through Methium can be added, while at the same time we will have to train ourselves workers to farm Methium and field attacking mercenaries to attack our enemies. So if you find it complicated, try to imagine playing 4 vs 4 multiplayer games. We also have an in-game shop with various additions including skins or cards that can be used only once, that you can buy both with coins earned in the game and with purchase of currency through real money. Auto Attack Games, however, is keen to let us know that the game is not pay to win and will not become pay to win in the future. Technically speaking, it will take more than a few games before you can get used to not only to the game mechanics, but also to understand if and which minions to field. Fortunately, an information table will help you out, and it will appear if you keep the mouse pointer still on some elements. Graphically, it promises to be a well-made title, and for me there were no drop frame rates, and it is perfectly playable. Personally, I am a lover of the tower defense genre, hence I found this title very pleasant. Initially, when I started playing this game, I found myself completely disoriented and confused, and I had to face many games before understanding the dynamics of the game. So this is a hard to learn, hard to master game that can deter many players. But if you are in it already and enjoying yourself, you won't be able to put it down. I mean, trust me, I have more than 250 hours in it already. Because, to be fair, I already had this game.
Yes, Your Grace is what I'd call a resource juggler management game. You play as the wise ruler of your kingdom, surrounded by your lovely queen, 3 daughters, and your advisors. Every day, one after another, your petitioners come up to you asking for your help with an issue they're facing, and you have to make a decision on whether or not you want to assist them, if you can do so even. That is because help comes in the form of granting resources, whether it is currency, food, or the precious time of your most important subjects, the general, the witch, and the hunter. However, there's a legitimate possibility you've already handed out all of your money, or gave away all the food when supporting the wedding of an earlier arrival. Maybe your general is out on a mission, and thus you can't send them to clear out the raiding bandits. Tough luck, every time you refuse to help, you're going to lose a bit of your standing with your people. And this is the core concept, nothing more, nothing less. Pay attention to what resources you have available, aim to distribute evenly, and try to please whenever you can. All of this is then spiced further with an ever-looming threat in the background that you need to prepare for and build up an army, your choices having lasting consequences with no way of going back on them, and an array of enjoyable characters. Yes, Your Grace probably wasn't ever a contender for Game of the Year for anyone, but it probably didn't aim to be that either. Instead, it's a perfectly enjoyable single-player game to switch off after a long day, with a strong, just one more turn effect going on. If that sounds like something you'd like, have at it.
Necromunda Hired Gun takes us to one of the most disturbing anthill planets in the Warhammer 40k universe, Necromunda precisely. Where injustices and disparities are the norm, ordinary people crawl like worms in the hope of picking up some credit, and factions of violent criminals dominate the streets. This is an ideal scenario for the Guild of Bounty Hunters, of which our character becomes part in the early stages of the campaign. After being rescued by the mysterious Khal Jericho and taken to the Martyrs' End meeting place, a refuge where you can interact with other mercenaries, buy new cybernetic grafts or new weapons, upgrade them and maybe spend some credit to improve the performance of our best friend, a faithful Mastiff. The most interesting aspect of Necromunda Hired Gun is the setting, that as mentioned will see us explore various places of a hostile and threatening planet, terrifying in its facets, where slaves are mutilated and connected to machinery of various kinds, and 3 criminal groups dominate the territory undisturbed. These are the enemies that we will face during the missions, and who are part of the Orlok family, the Asher family, and the Goliath family. Added to these are robot sentries, unstoppable trolls, and even hordes of gene stealers. As mentioned, the protagonist of Necromunda Hired Gun is a bounty hunter who ends up under the aegis of Khal Jericho and, albeit reluctantly, agrees to complete tasks for him until he gets on the trail of the guild's #1 target, the merciless Silver Talon. After selecting our next mission, we will be transferred to the place, and there we will have the task of completing a series of objectives that often include the elimination of all hostile units in this scenario, the collection of objects and the activation of devices. A relatively linear mix, which however will give us the opportunity to fully explore the locations and perhaps discover their secrets, thus obtaining extra resources. The loot obtained from each shipment can be analyzed piece by piece, and we will be able to keep the objects and devices that we consider most useful. Alternatively, we can sell. With the collected credits, we will be able to go to some retailers operating in Martyr's End and buy weapons and armor or upgrades that can give us extra skills and special attacks, as well as improve the strength and health. My problem with this game is that the entire system appears meh. The artificial intelligence of the enemies is frankly kinda ridiculous sometimes, and there is literally an avalanche of glitches and blatant uncertainties that undermines the enjoyment of the experience. At normal difficulty level, the challenge also becomes quite substantial, but for a mere question of numbers. The enemies as mentioned are decidedly stupid and do not boast complex routines, they just come at us. When they do it in large quantities. And we end up suffering a lot of damage, and recovering the damage from the finishers is sometimes not enough, to the point of having to resort to a medical kit or a stim after the game over to come back to life. A similar argument can be made for the boss fights as well, which turned out to be nothing but bullet sponges. For me, Necromunda Hired Gun is a bit of a searing disappointment. It's a conceptually and technically dated shooter, but served with great additions such as cybernetics and powers, and with a stellar universe. Overall, it's mediocre. 2 points.
I was honestly surprised to see there were no big hitters, no attention-grabbing titles, no obvious reason to throw money at Humble this month around. I'm even still pissed at how we got a game with a fucking 65% off coupon, which I find ridiculous as an offer, but spoiler warning, the game is apparently great, so I might have to end up checking it out anyway, and hush away my annoyance. Seeing how I already started with the results, we might as well go all the way. Our monthly top picks are Deep Rock, Legend of Keepers, and Yes Your Grace. I had a rough time making my mind up on the 4 games I've taken a look at, and while I've placed both Banners of Ruin and Trudograd in the middle tier, I'm fairly certain it would be easy to argue either or both also belong up there, but for the time being, they'll enjoy the company of Legion TD and Necromunda. This leaves none other than Lawn Mowing Simulator in the basement, but let's be honest, what else did we expect? A total 18 points out of the maximum 24, July picks up exactly where June left off, and the 75% gang grows ever stronger. Come on August, don't be shy to blow us away. As always, YouTube appreciates if you do YouTube things for the machine hive mind, and we'll see you again next month.